You are now listening to the Fighting Back podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis.
Welcome to the Fighting Back podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Travis, and I am here with attorney Juan De La Torre. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Jessica, for having me.
So you are an immigration attorney extraordinaire.
Thank you.
And I would love to talk immigration with you. But before we dig into the ins and outs of the immigration process, I want to get to know you a little bit. So can you tell our audience just a little bit about you, your background, where you went to that got you where you are today?
Well, I got into immigration law mainly because I'm the son of immigrants. I'm first-generation American. My mom and dad immigrated here in the 60s. My father was a translator for an airline.
Oh, that's cool.
That's how he made his way over. And my mother and my dad actually met in New York. And it turns out they were from the same city in Colombia. So they even got married back in Colombia.
Oh, how cool. Yeah. Okay.
So that's how I found a passion for immigration and helping immigrants navigate what can be a very complicated process at times to become a legal permanent resident or a United States citizen in the U.S. Aside from that, I went to school locally, UCF guy.
Go Knights.
Go Knights, charge on. I also went to Florida A&M College of Law. So I basically did all of my post-secondary schooling here in Orlando, Central Florida.
Very nice. And as far as your journey where you are now, you have your own firm.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your practice, your firm. What do you do in that?
Almost 17 years now. I was barred in 2010. So we're working on year 17.
Yeah, I think we're on that
now. Right there. I don't know about you, Jessica, but the more you tack on years to that count, it's like I'm starting to feel my age a little bit.
Yeah, I have to do the math, and then I'm like, no, that can't be right.
Exactly.
And then I'll have people who will be like, 20 years ago, and I'm like, shh, don't say that. That makes us look old.
Right. That's how my friend refers to. We started law school in 2005, and I'm like, don't go from the beginning of law school. Go from the end.
There you go.
Right. I practice in the areas of criminal defense, family law, and a major part of my practice, almost 17 years, has been immigration.
So let's talk a little bit about the immigration process. I want to dive in, and to give you and our listeners a background for anybody who doesn't know, I had an immigration conversation almost a year ago. It was back in June of 2025, and we talked about immigration and what was the state of immigration at that point. Now, as you know, things have changed a lot in a year.
A lot.
So I kind of wanted to do an update. I wanted to do a state of immigration now in 2026.
So about a year ago, this time last year, there was the hot topic of the issue of what's called temporary protected status.
Yes. So tell us what that is, just in case people didn't listen last year.
Temporary protected status is a humanitarian process that permits people who qualify under specific parameters set by the U.S. government, including elements such as like how long have you been here, when did you enter, how did you enter, and those are some of the elements that could be addressed in terms of how you qualify. Not every temporary protected status has the same elements, if you will, but they're similar.
So how long has temporary protected status been around?
The concept per se, I can't give you the history behind that, but I can tell you what it is essentially a humanitarian process.
Okay.
So TPS, it's in the family of like temporary protected status is also in the same family like asylum or humanitarian visas. It's a whole grouping of processes that are involved for humanitarian purposes with highlight. For example, in the case of Haiti, they obtained TPS status because of the major earthquakes that happened there in the last decade.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it basically, for layman's terms, and tell me if I'm misstating this, it's that something really bad happened or is happening in your home country.
Yes.
And you have to come to this country in order to escape it, because if you went back there, that'd be really bad.
Correct.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Like in Haiti's case, the earthquakes, in Venezuela, the Maduro regime.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to me about the TPS now. What is the current state of it?
Well, TPS is designated by country. So the hot topics over the last year, especially for us Floridians, has been the Venezuelan population and also the Haitian population, both of which we have strong numbers in, both in South Florida and Central Florida.
Okay.
In Venezuela's case, there's two designations, whether you applied it in 2021 or in 2023, both effectively, for all intents and purposes, ended. The only exception to that rule is if people had applied on or before February 5th of last year, and those people expire later on this year.
So then talk to me about the logistics of this. If somebody, say, came over from Venezuela, applied for TPS in 21 or 22, and they have been in the United States under this TPS umbrella, what happens now? What does this rule change do?
That's an excellent question, because for many Venezuelans, they've found themselves now in immigration limbo, right? Like they don't necessarily have a process that they can just immediately jump to. There is some carved out exceptions, which I've implemented in my practice for people who have never been what's called out of status. And what out of status means that, for example, the typical example is somebody arrives on a tourist visa or what's known as B1, B2. They usually get 6 months to be here.
Okay.
On day 181, a clock starts running, and that's the first day. So 181 actually becomes the first day that they're out of status.
Got it.
Right?
They don't have a visa or something else that legally
Correct.
allows them to be in the country.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that explanation. That I get so I get nerdy about this. In fact, the Facebook group for us immigration lawyers is actually referred to as the nerdy immigration lawyers law page.
I mean,
So,
I nerd out on a lot of other subject matters, but on this one, I'm coming at you as
Right.
somebody who doesn't practice immigration law.
No, I get it, and your interpretation of what I'm delivering is it's helping me explain it as well.
All right.
The main point is that they were left in limbo, the Venezuelans, and now it's what do they do? So there was an exception in the rule that if you've never been out of status, as I was referring to, that you can transfer to a different status. So I had clients, for example, that never filed an asylum application, and this is specifically what I'm referring to, is like you can still file an asylum even though you never previously filed one, and it's still timely filed if you've never been out of status since you arrived to the U.S.
Okay.
So, case example, I had a young lady who arrived originally on a tourist, and then from a tourist she transferred to a student visa, and from a student visa she transferred to something called OPT status, which is basically permits people who have obtained education here under a student visa to work in a practical sense, such as an internship or something like that for a period of time. And then from her OPT status, she transferred to TPS status. So she had never been out of status.
Okay.
Right. So that ultimately allowed me to, when her documents expired under TPS, to file asylum for her. But that just presented a new problem, right? That, because asylums are definitely being questioned very strenuously, and there is a perception, if you will, that many people that have arrived here in an undocumented status, which is to distinguish that as people that crossed the border without any type of paperwork, right? The example that we were talking about before we went live on the show was, if somebody comes to your door at your house and they knock on the door,
yes,
you let them in. Well, they've entered legally. That's the equivalent of the people that apply for tourist visas or any other type of visa that says, hey, I'd like to come visit the U.S. and they're granted it. Well, then we've let them in, right?
They have some type of visa?
Correct. Yes, okay. Yes, in most cases. The exception to what I've just described is something that's occurred on the border and is tied into the to the asylum claims in general, which is kind of a middle of the road approach to what I just said. Is people that go to a border inspection site and don't necessarily have a visa, but they're knocking on the door,
and asking to be legally let in.
And they're asking to be let in legally for the purposes of filing their asylum, and that's been a hot topic. Actually, one that I've litigated recently out of Texas with a client who was released from criminal detention here to Texas, and I was arguing the same issue a week ago.
Okay. Yeah. So then, when we were talking about TPS, I did want to go back there for a minute, because you said that what the changes are, there are certain countries now that are no longer having that TPS.
Correct.
You mentioned Venezuela. What are the other countries that people should kind of be on the lookout for that TPS may be going away?
Haiti is going to, basically Haiti is but for a case I believe it's out of the District of Columbia. They've already ended, the designation has already ended for Haiti.
Okay.
And when I say the designation, it means the time period, the term, right?
So they now become out of status.
Right. And the only thing that's holding that off is an injunction out of the District of Columbia.
Okay.
The situation there, and it's interesting to see all this played out, and this is very matter of fact.
Okay.
You go onto the United States Customs and Immigration Services website and pull up Haiti designation for TPS, and what you're going to get is an explanation, and it's actually telling you that, the Secretary of USCIS disagrees with the opinion of the District Court of Columbia, and they start citing to other cases, particularly there's some Supreme Court cases that were already rendered, and it's just interesting to see this whole legal debate.
So it's in a legal limbo at this
point.
Okay,
right.
Makes sense.
At this point, but for all intents and purposes, but for an act of Congress, which there is one going on. Maxwell Frost, the local congressman out of Orlando, co-sponsored a bill to extend TPS for Haitians under everything we've discussed. It's not just in Haiti's case, it's not just the earthquakes. It's the regime down there is it's not safe down there, right? Just to make it a very simple explanation. So that's where we stand. It does look, unfortunately, like Haiti's TPS designation will go away. I don't see that as a battle that's going to be won in the courts in favor of Haitian TPS. And the other matter is that what are they going to do next? It's the same question that pertains to the Venezuelans. Well, if I don't have TPS now, then what do I do?
And we don't know next steps yet.
Correct.
Okay.
A lot of people, they're granted TPS status and any status. I'm going to kind of just do a catch-all here. Imagine you go to school, right? And like in my case, I met my wife in 1998.
Wow.
Right? My first year of college at UCF. We met on campus. We began dating in 1999, and we've been together for 27 years. It's a very common thing that happens, right? So imagine somebody coming here on a student visa or something like that, or in this case, even because I said this was going to apply to everything, the matter of TPS, right? They've met a U.S. citizen, they can marry. So now this brings me to the subject matter of how do they become legal permanent residents?
And that's the green card we talked about.
And that's the green card.
Okay.
That's the green card. And
talk to me about that process.
That's what I want to get to. Thank you so much for giving me a bold and big transition into the subject matter, because it's very important to identify the changes that are happening in real time, both here in the month of May and June, as we head into the deeper months of summer, right? And what's happened is that the administration is saying that people who entered legally, who knocked on the door, who have a status because they entered legally, who have met a U.S. citizen because they've lived here for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Like we said, you meet people, you go to school, you work, you do your daily life, you're going to meet someone. And they've met someone, and by all intents and purposes, this is a run-of-the-mill immigration application where you can just apply for through your spouse. You entered legally, and that qualifies you for what's called adjustment of status. we immigration lawyers just refer to it as AOS, right?
Okay. And that gets adjusted from the visa that you are
correct.
on to the green card.
That's exactly what it means, and that's hence the word adjustment, is you're transferring from one process to another legally, right?
Okay.
All of this is very legal.
Okay.
And recently the administration has rolled back the rights for this because I don't want to get too technical, and you're doing a great job, Jessica, for the viewers here, keeping this nerdy immigration lawyer honest about all the technical jargon. But the code basically says that these individuals may adjust status.
Okay.
And as you know, I know that you're a lawyer and I'm a lawyer. The difference between may and must is two different things. So the administration is using that as a means to say that it's not an absolute, that each individual who qualifies for an adjustment of status is entitled to one in the U.S. and has decided to point all these individuals to the United States embassies abroad, which is immigration is such an interesting area of law because, it's very administrative in nature and bureaucratic.
Right.
To give an example, the embassies are governed by the Department of State, right? Makes sense,
Okay.
right? And the United States Customs and Immigration Services, which is the local field offices that process adjustment of status and green
Department of
cards,
Justice, I thought.
they're actually housed at the Department of Homeland Security. Correct.
So completely different.
So that's
departments
DHS.
and-
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then the immigration courts are not Article 3 courts. They're actually, that's where you're correct. They're housed under the Department of Justice. And
Interesting.
and
Okay.
what's called the Executive Office of Immigration Review. So you have all these different entities, and they're all basically executive branch entities, right? So that's where
But under different departments.
Under different departments. But that's where executive orders, which the president has the right to issue an executive order to govern his agencies and how they perform their duties in executing the laws that are passed by Congress. He can do that via executive order. Where it gets a little, I don't want to get into the P word here, but where it gets into a system of checks and balances, better yet, as to whether it be Congress or the president, is that Congress has the purview of passing immigration laws, right? So the interesting part about this is that there's bills in Congress right now. Like I mentioned, there's a bill extending Haitian TPS, sponsored by Congressman Maxwell Frost. But there aren't any that have really been sent up by both houses and then to the president for signature. So a lot of what you're seeing is actually the result of executive orders and internal policies that are being set by the administration.
So I want to transition a little bit because we handle a lot of criminal law, and so we handle the criminal cases, and I want to get your opinion and give the listeners a little bit of advice on some of these situations. A lot of what we get is somebody will get arrested for a criminal offense. They will be undocumented, so they will get arrested, go to jail for the criminal offense, and then when their family posts bond on the criminal case, they will be held by ICE and then detained and go from there. So the questions that we often get from the family members are, where is my family member located? Where are they? And what can we do about the process at this point? So can you talk a little bit about the immigration process and what happens when a person gets arrested for a criminal offense, bonds out, but doesn't get released?
Right. That has been a hugely hot topic all over the country. And there's been a lot of positive movement for the immigrant in the U.S. federal court for the Middle District of Florida, which is right here in Orlando. There's also branches in Tampa and I think Jacksonville, as you know. But they've issued a lot of habeas, or granted a lot of petitions for habeas corpus. I mention that first and foremost because that's been the typical way for someone who is detained without cause to be released after they're bonded out.
Okay.
But that doesn't get to the square one or the ground zero of the problem, right? There's two issues. One, whether they're going to qualify for bond, right? An immigration bond,
which is different
because
than the criminal bond.
They've already gotten a criminal bond,
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So there are many issues that apply as to whether they're going to get a bond in immigration court.
Okay.
So, for example, there's the issue of whether their crime is a violent crime, right?
Okay.
Because Congress did pass a law known as Lake and Riley, which indicates that any person accused of a violent crime has to be mandatorily detained by immigration, which makes them not bond eligible automatically. Then there's a whole other legal discussion based upon whether someone is seeking admission or not seeking admission. I'm not going to get into the details of it. It's very nerdy stuff. But a recent case out of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which applies to Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, so we're governed there, which is the matter of Hernandez-Alvarez, has indicated that people who are not subject to Lake and Riley, mandatory detention, and people who are otherwise eligible for bond under two different codes under the Immigration Act, which is one is 236 and one is 235. So if you qualify under 236, you get a bond.
Okay.
And the presumption is a $1,500 bond, in fact. So it's not a very high bond.
Okay.
And it's usually for people who are not accused of serious things.
And is that a shall or is that a discretionary?
It's discretionary, and it can be denied based upon the factors that are presented to the court. So let's remember that the standards in immigration court are very different from criminal court, right? In immigration court, the government does not bear the burden of proof, unlike in criminal court, right? In immigration court, the what's known as the respondent, which is the alien, the immigrant, has to prove their case. You understand?
Oh.
So, like in criminal cases, the state would have to prove that somebody should be subject to mandatory detention based upon the likelihood they committed a very, very, very serious felony, such as murder, right? In immigration court, you have to prove that you're entitled to the bond, and the government just tries to poke holes in your case. It's quite the opposite dynamics from being in criminal court to being in immigration court. Okay.
So it really, would you recommend that if somebody has been detained, is there a way for the family to know where they are? So, for example, in criminal, whenever you get detained and you go to jail, we're able to, go on, there's a jail public record. We're able to look to see whether...
I am so sorry about that.
No.
I feel like I'm in court and I'm about to be yelled at by the judge.
We're able to see, that the person is in jail, where they're being held, things like that. Is there that same type of public record or?
Yes, it's called the ICE detainee locator.
Okay.
I could not give you the specific URL if I wanted to, but if you Google ICE, the acronym for Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, all caps, ICE detainee locator, it'll bring you to a webpage, and what you need there is you need to have something called the client's or your family member's alien number, which is how they're identified. If they haven't been assigned one previously from some other process they've done, they will be assigned one when the ICE officer comes to the local jail to pick them up. Okay. The other important thing I want to highlight here, and this I can't stress this enough. This, if we forget anything, if you're watching out there, if you forget anything, remember this. That case has to be analyzed immediately by both immigration counsel and criminal counsel.
Yes.
The biggest mistakes I've seen made is that someone will only take the advice of their criminal defense attorney, which it's not a bad thing what the criminal defense attorney is doing. They're trying to preserve their best interest in terms of how to resolve a case.
Right.
Right? Take a plea deal, get rid of this case quickly, resolve it fast, and you're on about your way. Right? But please have entering an agreement with state and in any shape or form have consequences, immigration consequences. Yes. That case I was recently referring to was actually a case that we had in common, and that case involved an individual with a weapons charge, and he married a United States citizen along everything we've discussed, and the argument on the immigration side is I'm attempting to to adjust my status
Right.
because I'm married to a U.S. citizen.
Yes.
And the roadblock at the very end game was that if you're found to have been convicted of a weapons charge, you're inadmissible pursuant to Sections 237 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which means now you're dead on arrival, right? Like
Right.
you can't get the relief that you're seeking.
Just
So-
with the weapons charge.
Correct.
Wow.
Which is really ironic because we're like an open carry state now,
Right.
and all of that. So it's just really, really ironic that that's happening. But the charges need, and whatever result is being presented need to be analyzed there. The other thing that needs to be considered is that in our current climate, you bond out of your criminal proceeding. You go to the immigration detention center. You're not eligible bond for whatever reason.
Right.
You're deported. That open case that you left behind, that you did not resolve, now becomes a way to deny you any future relief at the United States Embassy abroad.
Because you have that pending criminal
Right.
case.
It was unresolved. We don't know the disposition, which
Right.
nerdy legal talk. We don't know the final result of the case.
Right.
Was it dismissed? Were you found guilty? Was it dropped? Were you dismissed? Innocent? Whatever. And that really messes people up because and the hardest part, and I know you've been there, Jessica, and I've been there, is understanding that person, the family member's anxiety. And that person who's in detention, their anxiety of especially if they've never been in trouble before, right?
Right.
And they're sitting there and they just want to get freed, right? They want to be back out with their families, their loved ones, and doing their daily routine.
So it's really in a situation where people who have been arrested for a criminal case and are not a citizen, it may be a good idea to consult with an immigration attorney before even deciding to post bond.
Yes, in most
that makes sense.
in most cases, not all. You know how that law school stuff. No, there's no
Right, of
absolutes, right?
And
But
no one's going to want to hear that. No one is going to want to say, like, okay, let me just stay in jail until I
Right.
get this all worked out.
Right.
No one wants that.
but resolving it gives you a better
Right.
fighting chance. And unfortunately, if the problem is that if you're released from criminal custody,
Right.
the chances that the federal government, ICE, is going to give you back to the state authorities to present yourself for court
Unlikely.
are probably slim to none.
Right.
I had another interesting case for a Brazilian national where I represented them both on the criminal and the immigration side, and I made an argument in Polk County, which I thought was convincing, but essentially the argument was that the state had the burden to have him transported back to Polk County
Right.
to stand trial, and the judge is looking at me, and I'm like, well, he's in governmental custody. I was like, why don't they file a motion for to have him transferred? And it didn't work in Polk County, but as we know about the courts, I have heard it's worked in other places. So,
Okay.
all right.
Okay. That is really good to know. So I think the takeaway so far is that if you have any type of criminal situation, you need a criminal defense attorney, fighter law, and you need an immigration attorney, Attorney Juan De La Torre.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So we are wrapping up, but I did want to just make sure, is there any other common misconception or really some takeaway that you think people, especially individuals who may have that criminal case and not a U.S. citizen, are there any takeaways that you think people should really know about that?
Obviously, getting counsel, like you just mentioned, about talking to your criminal defense attorney, talking to immigration lawyer, and hopefully have them work together, right?
Right.
We had the opportunity at De La Torre Law Firm to work in conjunction with Fighter Law recently,
Yes.
and collaborate. And I think that those are the
It was a
types.
really good collaboration.
To answer the question, I think the answer is hopefully, since you need both services, you find an attorney or a group of attorneys that can collaborate and work closely together. As we all know, not everybody plays together the same, but it was a pleasure working with Fighter Law and being of counsel to the immigration issues in that case.
Absolutely. Well, if there are listeners out there who are facing immigration issues and would like more information or would like a consultation with your law firm, can you tell a little bit about how that can happen?
Yes, we can be reached at 407-733-0640. Our website's delatorrelaw.com. We're on all the social media platforms under De La Torre Law Firm, Facebook. What's the new one with the kids?
TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
TikTok, and LinkedIn, all the other social media platforms.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really enjoyed talking with you, getting an update on immigration law and kind of where we are right now. I am sure things are going to continue to change. So I would love for you to come back on at a later time and tell us about how things have changed from today.
Thank you for the invite. It's been interesting to say the least.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fighting Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fighter Law or any of its attorneys. If you are facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.